The historic red brick courthouse in Rockville sets the stage for County Councilmember Phil Andrews' conversations with two sitting judges who serve Montgomery County. He first sat down with the Honorable Karla Smith, Associate Judge with the District Court of Maryland. Turns out the two go way back.
Well, I wouldn't usually call a judge by their first name, but I've known you a long time, Karla. I knew you before a judge, so welcome and nice to see you.
Good to see you too. You're not going to say how long we've known each other?
Oh, it's been, well, a long time,
Right.
30, 35 years.
Right,
No,
I think I was
years?
probably in elementary school.
Right, because
when
I
we
knew
first
your dad
met.
so well. Right. And
Exactly.
your dad was a Sunday school teacher of mine at Cedar Lane Unitarian Church, and so I knew your dad when he was still pretty young.
Right, and now look at you, county council member.
Well, it's no explaining some things, but it's good to see you. And now you've been a judge for almost 2 years.
I have.
And that's a big difference from being a practicing attorney. So
It's very different. It's well, I was a prosecutor for almost 15 years. Very intense child abuse and domestic violence, and I still see domestic violence cases, obviously, in the district court, but you see it in a different way.
Right.
You don't take your cases home with you the way you do as a prosecutor of very serious crimes. So that's been a nice change for me.
Right. Well, good, because you did so much on those kinds of cases. I know we worked together on the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, and
Absolutely.
You
Still do.
Still do. That's true, and you're chairing that now. So thank you for.
No, thank you, Phil, for making me chair it.
Well, there was no one better to do it. But before that, when you were serving on the council, you were volunteering a lot of time just going into classrooms to teach students about how to avoid abusive relationships.
Absolutely.
And that was a huge contribution, I think.
It was. I guess I spent maybe the last 2.5 years working as a prosecutor doing the Healthy Teen Dating Initiative, which
Right.
was started by the DVCC. And so I went to almost every high school in the county and spoke to kids in different classrooms, different settings about the importance of healthy relationships. What's a healthy relationship? What's an unhealthy relationship? And it was interesting because I felt like every time I talked about it, I was learning things and the students were learning things. And obviously there's this idea that if we kind of get kids thinking at the age of 14 and 15 about what they should expect, what they deserve in their lives, and not even just their dating relationships, their relationships with their friends, whomever, we can hopefully reduce the amount of violence we see in relationships.
And break the cycle.
Break the cycle,
That's
absolutely.
what we try to do. Now you're also, you have 3 boys.
Yes.
And so that must be hard to balance, being a judge and having 3 still young boys.
It's interesting. My day does not end when I walk out of the courtroom, that is for sure. It's kind of like that phase 2 of my day. They all play lacrosse, they all play hockey, 2 of them play soccer. For instance, when you and I are finished here, I will be driving to the ice rink. So, it's just kind of that I have 3 jobs, judge, mother, wife.
Right.
So
Well,
I'm going to leave here and put on my mom hat for a little while.
All right. Well, they can aspire to be as athletic as you are. So
They could.
They could. That would be good. Good. Well, so what made you decide to become a judge?
I think that I loved working in the courtroom. I loved practicing law. I loved the types of cases that I handled. And I felt like I could take all of the things that I've learned in practicing and my upbringing, my knowledge of the law, and do something different with it. And so that's kind of why I set out to be a judge. I did that. Worked as a prosecutor for 15 years, and then I thought I was ready for a new and different challenge.
Right.
And so that's why I started to pursue it.
Congratulations. It's not easy to become a judge.
Thank you. No, it's not.
And it's a very huge responsibility. But
it's a very huge responsibility. I think particularly, one of the things about the district court, and I try and keep this in my mind every single time I hear a case, every single time I'm in court, is that criminal cases alone in Montgomery County, the district court sees 30,000 cases a year. Add in the civil cases and the number even is larger.
Yeah.
And when you think about how most of the citizens of the county, of the state, who are going to court are going to be seen in the district court.
Right.
The circuit court hears more serious cases in terms of, monetary value, punishment, that sort of thing. But the district court hears more cases.
Right.
So your average citizen, when they go to court, they're going to the district court. And so it's important, I think, as a judge, and I try and really keep this in my mind, even when I feel like, oh, I can't hear another thing about this case, or whatever the case may be, I always want to be listening. I want to take notes. I want to make sure that the people have their opportunity to say everything that they want to be able to say, even if it didn't go their way.
Yeah.
Someone, I was heard, I had my opportunity, and that's, and it worked.
Right, and that may be their one day in court in their life.
Exactly.
And you want it to be a good experience. I know I feel that same way when we have people come and testify at the county council. It's a big deal for a lot of people to come and testify.
Big deal. Absolutely.
And a lot of people don't do it very often. They might do it just once. And so I've always felt it's really important to make sure that they are listened to, and that you're there to hear their case. You're there really to hear them.
Absolutely. I'm a public servant.
Right, and that takes a lot of work to keep that intensity up.
I absolutely agree, because when you've been, you've had a long day, you've been listening all day, it's an easy thing to forget.
Yeah. Now, I first met you through your dad, your dad, John, who is an amazing person, a poet, former congressional staffer, an activist on the schools. I mean, he's been chair of the...
He's a Renaissance man, and he's a great cook.
Is he?
Yes.
Ah.
Great cook.
All right. Well, that's good.
He really is.
Yeah. Well, he must be very proud of you.
Yeah, I think he's proud of me, and I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of my mom. I think they're both getting up there in age, but they're still out there, working and volunteering and babysitting their grandkids and going places with their grandkids. My mom and I took the boys the other day to the White House Easter egg roll.
Oh, cool.
And we had all-day passes, and there was their grandmother all day long walking all over the White House. Now, when we got home, she could hardly walk to her car, but she was she was part of that with the boys, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that is. It is. Well, I've been lucky to have John working with me for a long time now, and he is amazing.
He is. As a kid growing up, he worked on the Hill, and he worked on the Hill at a time when it was, very different. I'll just say it was very different than what we know about Congress today.
Not nearly as partisan.
Yeah, and I can remember being, little, really little, and going to work with my dad, third grade or whatever, meeting the congressman, meeting this congressman, that congressman, going to the ice cream social, and as I think growing up here, you kind of did think, oh, everyone's doing that, you know?
Right.
But really, what a special thing to have happen. When I was in fourth grade, we had a biography assignment, and I read Shirley Chisholm's biography. So my dad says, we'll go and I'll arrange a meeting with Shirley Chisholm.
Okay.
So my dad, my mom, and Ms. Seymour, my fourth grade teacher, we all went down to the Hill.
All right.
And I interviewed Shirley Chisholm on one of these little, tape things with the recorder. And I actually have a photograph of she and I together, and it's in my chambers. And I mean, I think she was just such an incredible woman who broke down barriers and just was brilliant. I mean, how many kids get that opportunity? And that was because my dad didn't think to himself, oh, this little 8-year-old or, doesn't need an experience like that. He thought, what a great experience.
Did you ever think about running for office?
I used to think I wanted to be involved in politics. So right out of college, of course, I worked on the Hill.
Right.
And I did that for a year. I worked for Major Owens, who was a great man, and he actually just recently passed away. And after that first year, I thought, I don't think this is for me, really.
Okay.
So I went to law school. When you don't know what to do, you go to law school. No, I'm kidding.
And you actually are practicing. You practiced.
I did.
All right, so
I did.
Good move. Well, it's great to have someone like you on the bench, because you bring that experience of really working with victims as well to the position, so you can imagine without too much difficulty what they might be going through.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked for a long time as a prosecutor representing victims, so when I got on the bench, it was important, and it still is important to me, because I think every day you're learning something new, and you're fine-tuning what it is that you do. But it's been this daily thing of thinking, okay, you're not an advocate, you
Right.
are
You are the judge.
the judge, you are neutral.
Impartial, right.
It's important, not just because that's what my job is, but it's also important, I think, for people who have known me as that prosecutor to be able to see me as a judge and know that when they walk in the courtroom, it's still going to be fair.
Right.
It's not going to be one way or another.
Right. I know you've worked on a lot of important issues over your career, but I understand there's one in particular that you're really proud of that you helped get through Annapolis. What was that?
The criminalization of child neglect in the state. Maryland was the only state in the country that didn't have a child neglect law. So again, when I was wearing my prosecutor hat, I worked with Anthony Brown to try and push that through Annapolis. So, and we were successful.
Wow. Did you were able to get it the first year, or take a couple?
No. In fact, it was introduced maybe for like 5 years. And the way it came to my attention was I was in Nordstrom one day at the makeup counter.
Okay.
And I saw this child, 7 years old maybe, and looked like the child's hair had been kind of plucked out of his or her hair. And I'm saying his or her because I, to this day, don't know if it was a boy or a girl. Saggy clothes, unkempt, looked like he or she hadn't had a shower. And I look over and I see the child with his or her mother, who was wearing designer jeans and fully put together. And I was really upset, and I called my supervisor, Laura Chase, and I said, we got to start focusing on child neglect cases. This is terrible. I'm looking at it right here. And she said there's no law against child neglect. And so I put that in the back of my mind, and when I started doing some trainings for the governor's office, I started saying to the people who helped with the legislative agenda, child neglect, think child neglect. That's where we got to go. We got to go child neglect. And then a couple years went by, and I got a phone call. I think we're going to go with child neglect. You want to help work on it? Yes, I do.
That's often how legislation gets started, is someone sees something that strikes them as wrong or needing change. And serving on the county council, you see, I have opportunities to work on things.
Absolutely.
So
Didn't you do the living wage? Wasn't that your?
Yeah, and that,
before everybody was doing it, right?
It took. It was early on. It was back in 2000. Actually, 1999 was the first year I introduced it, and it took 3 years to get it through. I asked about how long it took on the child neglect, because usually it takes more than a year to get something major through, and the living wage law took 3 years, and it was a pretty sustained effort. But a lot of people helped, and we were one of the first jurisdictions to do it. But it was important, I thought, to make sure that the county was using its own money in a way that wasn't keeping people in poverty.
Absolutely.
But those are the sort of things that are very satisfying to do, and you can see the difference that you make, especially in local government. It's a great pleasure and honor to have a chance to do it. Well, thank you so much for coming in and for all that you're doing. And it's always good to catch up with you, Karla.
I know. It's always fun. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Karla.
All right.